Hello guys. This video is probably going to be one of my core videos in this channel because it's going to address a number one question that I received from people who has started this process, who has seen certain shift, certain improvement in their experience. And usually what they share is that I started seeing like better, like I started seeing improvements. I started sleeping better, or maybe I still experience a lot of wakefulness, a lot of choppiness, but I am no longer afraid of it so much. I don't panic. I just, nights go easier for me, right? So they acknowledge certain change, certain shift, but then they are concerned about the fact that they still keep thinking about insomnia during the day. So they feel like even though I made such a good progress, thoughts about sleep and insomnia and fears and doubts are still coming up during the day. I still feel consumed about this, and it's so exhausting. I cannot focus on anything else, and I just want to overcome it. So if this is something that you are going through, I just want you to know that there is nothing wrong about this. There is absolutely no reason to think that because you're having this thoughts about insomnia, thoughts about sleep during the day, even as you started taking steps forward, it doesn't mean that you are doing something wrong with your recovery journey. In fact, I think those type of thoughts cannot not show up at this time, because let's take an example of something big, something intense happening to us during the day. Let's say, you're crossing a road and then a car almost hits you. Luckily, nothing happened, right? But this experience shocked you. And how likely are you to feel somewhat unsettled throughout the day? Probably the flavor of that first experience that you had during the day will kind of bring or carry on with you during the day as well. And similar things happen when we are experiencing insomnia. So insomnia has been this very traumatic, very intense experience, and it's normal that the aftertaste of it still lingers, still seeps into our days. And treating those thoughts as something abnormal, something that shouldn't be there, only makes them stickier, only makes us even more involved into problem solving. And so the thing that I usually share with the person who shares with me something like this is that allow yourself to feel or think about insomnia during the day. It doesn't mean that you need to necessarily get involved with those thoughts or really like consciously invest into problem solving or rumination, but make it okay for you to have those thoughts. Because the moment when we are starting to resist them, to try to find strategies or tricks to fool the brain into not thinking about it, they just become stickier. What we really need is to change our relationship with those thoughts. The thought themselves or the memory of insomnia, they are not a problem. What makes them a problem is how we interpret that experience. What meaning do we assign to it? And so when we look at those thoughts as something that this is wrong, this shouldn't be happening, this means that I'm still not over it, that I still need to try harder, I still need to figure it out something, right? Then of course those thoughts are going to have power over us. We are going to be deeply affected by having those thoughts. But when we look at those thoughts as something casual, something meaningless, something that is just some sort of like an aftertaste from something that used to be intense before, and just allow that aftertaste to be there, then eventually those thoughts start to shift and become less and less relevant for our brain to bring up. So the thing that I usually share with people also is that fear never goes away from 100 to 0 in a short amount of time. Usually it goes through a transformation, right? So at first it might have this like a peak intensity, then it can start to shift into milder and milder forms, or it can start look more like anger or sadness or anything like that, right? So it's normal that we are not just kind of like a light switch turns off, right? We are allowed to still experience residual worries, residual memories, and intrusive thoughts, even after we started making progress. And by the way, this question is so common, even not just from people who just like kind of started to, move forward with their recovery, but also people who are already in the midst of it. They've seen already more progress, but they're still kind of hesitant, like, why am I still thinking about this here and there? And even it can happen to people at the very tail end of the recovery process, where a big chunk of work is already done, but there's still here and there this kind of like very subtle flavor to their days. It's like it's things are better, but it's still something is missing, some effortlessness is missing, right? And so I just want to really normalize this experience and just to tell you that the thoughts about sleep, the insomnia memory and aftertaste is going to fade away so gradually. And by gradually, I don't mean that there is going to be a linear process. What usually happens is that we might experience periods when things are kind of going easier, and then there will be periods when things get intense, but then the amount of thoughts that we are having during the day kind of intensifies, right? And then it drops again, and then it intensifies again. So there is dynamic. It's a very live process. It's not something that has to follow a certain straightforward line. So just wanted to share this with you guys and to help you see that what you're going through is not wrong. Now, what is also helpful to acknowledge is that as we start taking first steps, we might notice first glimpses when we don't think about sleep that much. Maybe it's just a few seconds when we feel like our old selves, like life starts to feel like, oh, it feels so light, so unburdened, right? And that glimpse can last maybe a few seconds or a few minutes, right? It can be so short-lived, right? And then the thoughts about insomnia again like flood back in, and again we're feeling again unsettled, right? But those first glimpses are very powerful reminders that existing without those thoughts is possible, and we are just seeing first pieces of evidence of that. Now, it's okay that those moments are going to be very fleeting, very unstable, and they're going to quickly get replaced by, again, rumination and fear and all this kind of stuff. But just knowing that there are small shifts that are happening when we are thinking a bit less about this, that's already helps us see that there is a possibility of not struggling with it. And what happens as we are let the recovery unfold on its own, those glimpses start to kind of become more and more established. Maybe they last longer or they happen more frequently, while still there will be moments when we keep being reminded of insomnia struggle. That's okay too. That's also something that needs to be allowed and just experienced. As the journey unfolds organically, the ratio of those glimpses versus those intense moments are going to kind of flip. And so we are going to experience longer periods of this peace and ease in our days. And there will be still certain, moments when we feel again kind of like unsettled. Again, we are thinking about it, that also is normal. So normalizing that and allowing whatever percentage, whatever ratio of thoughts, no thoughts be, is something that can really facilitate this process. It's not going to be a quick process. There is no shortcuts, unfortunately. And just letting this process to kind of take its usual course is something that can really help us out here. And then when we are at the kind of tail end of recovery process, we might experience something what I would describe as kind of like a whisper of insomnia. It's very faint, very mild, but it's still there. And it's so helpful to not get discouraged just because that whisper is still there. There's still this kind of flavor, we are, doing things as usual. We are planning trips. We are going out with friends. We are doing things that we enjoy, right? And then there's still part of us that is like, hey, I know there is a lot of fun and life is great, but you're still having something, still there's something is left, right? And this kind of remembrance is also okay. and it's also natural. We don't have to fight it. It's a part of this process. I went through this as well. And I remember that after I shared my recovery story with Coach Daniel on his channel, I still experience those kind of whispers. There's still, I would approach nighttime, and there would be part of me that would kind of like remind me of like, hey, do you remember what it was like? What if it's going to be that difficult again, And I was being more okay with those thoughts, but I always kept wondering like when they are going to end. And so for quite some time, I tried to really make sure that I don't experience them, and they just kept showing up over and over and over again, until the point when I realized like, okay, I'm still feeding this problem by trying to kind of find a solution to completely eradicate those thoughts. And obviously this direction is not working. It's not helping me. It takes away focus from just living my life and sorting out other things that deserve my attention way more. And I asked myself, even if I keep having those whispers, can I make it okay? If that's going to be my life from now on, like, can I make it okay that those things are still there? I know that I can still live my life. I can do things, and if the price is just that I'm having those thoughts or mild remembrances, then why not to take it? And so I started kind of like warming up towards this idea that, okay, that's going to be my new normal, and I'm just gonna, integrate it as a part of my experience of evenings and nights. And it's so interesting that over time, because those thoughts, they were normalized, I really started forgetting to think about them on some nights, right? So again, as with those glimpses, right, they started fading away. Those mild whispers, they also started to kind of like disappear. There would be like a few nights when I would just really don't think about it. And then I would kind of realize that, oh, wait, yesterday I actually casually just went to bed and I didn't think about anything. Like, wow, that I've never experienced that, right? And so I just let it be, like, let those residual thoughts to arise whenever they wanted to arise. And it just led to life feeling like life again. And this was such a gradual process that I cannot even put a date on it. And so I just want to really kind of give you this idea of like, what's the realistic perspective here? Like, it's going to take time, and it's going to really unfold very, very, very gradually. And in whatever stage you're in, whatever the degree of those thoughts, those residual like aftertastes or whispers or whatever that looks like for you right now, it's okay to allow them, to feel them, not resist them, and most importantly, just really recognize them and see them for what they really are. They're not an indicators that you're doing something wrong, that you are kind of like going backwards, or that they are somehow here because like you still haven't figured it out. They are just kind of like I think like thinking of it like as an aftertaste takes away this heaviness of this experience, takes away this like special meaning of those residual thoughts. And then it can just make it easier for us to kind of coexist with them. So I hope this was helpful. Let me know in comments if this made sense. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to then refer people, who ask me this question, because it's a super common question. I'm going to refer them to this video. So yeah, thank you so much for listening, and have a nice day.